Welcome, everybody, to episode 194 of the Healthy Habit Podcast. And look who's back here checking in with us, representing Terry Naturally and EuroPharma Inc. We're talking with Cheryl Myers, who's quickly become a fan favorite here on the podcast and radio show over the last several years. Cheryl's the Chief of Scientific Affairs for EuroPharma. She's a healthcare professional with certifications in cancer, pain control, and issues of aging. Cheryl's an expert in dietary supplements and natural medicines who's been a featured guest on hundreds of radio and television shows. Cheryl's a member of the editorial board of the Natural Medicine Journal, and her own published research has included topics such as menopause, diabetes, sleep disorders, and digestive health. We're going to be breaking down the most powerful medicine, natural medicine in the world, one of them at least, curcumin and Curamed. We're going to be talking about a superior absorption form of curcumin today, the 750 milligram curcumin complex with Cheryl. And I'm going to do a quick screen share here, just if you're watching on YouTube. It's the orange box. Look for that bottle. It comes in the 30 soft gel version. And this is up to 500 times stronger than just general turmeric. Cheryl, welcome back.
It's always a pleasure to be able to visit.
I'm excited to talk to you here today. It's an important check-in here. People are constantly looking for the correct curcumin or turmeric to add into their natural medicine cabinet. So where do you want to start us off with here? I have a couple pieces of literature I might highlight here from Jan McBaron, medical doctor and naturopathic doctor, as well as, of course, from Terry Talks Nutrition. We'll give people the link there to join Terry's newsletter as well. So, yeah, the stage is yours. Let's break down Curamed and all things curcumin here today.
Well, I think I don't envy consumers because it is very difficult to sort through the incredible volumes of information out there. Curcumin has quickly become one of the top, if not the top, best-selling herb in the nation because it is so super powerful. However, it comes from the spice turmeric, and a lot of people have heard of turmeric, but not quite as many people have heard of curcumin. And so when we look at websites, when we look at articles, when we look at magazines, a lot of times you'll see the headlines say turmeric, like what spice hiding in your kitchen cabinet might be the cure for arthritis. It's turmeric. But if you click on it and you read, you'll see it's not turmeric. Turmeric is the parent compound, but the compound that was used in the study is curcumin. So turmeric is a wonderful, healthy food. And if you like turmeric and if you cook with it, more power to you. Bless your heart, it is good for you. However, it contains very small amounts of the natural medicine curcumin. In fact, turmeric is only 2% to 5% curcumin. So very, very low levels. Curcumin is what we call, well, number one, it's a polyphenol, but it's also a pigment. A pigment is what gives the plants its color. And very often, the thing that gives the plant its color sometimes is a very, very powerful compound. For example, what makes tomatoes red? Lycopene.
Mm-hmm.
What makes carrots orange? Beta carotene. Indirectly, what makes salmon and shrimp pink? Astaxanthin. So sometimes these pigments themselves have tremendous medicinal value, but they aren't very much of the plant. And so that's what we run into initially is that individuals read these stories, these articles, they listen to. I have a love-hate relationship with Dr. Oz because he does at least highlight this world of
Right.
natural interventions, but at the same time, he doesn't always get it right. So he called it turmeric as well, when it's not turmeric. It is the compound curcumin. So as I said, turmeric contains very little curcumin. You have to take it out and concentrate it in order to get the medicinal value. When I'm talking to patients or when I'm talking to customers, I say, let's jump off the rails for a second and talk about vitamin C.
Yep.
If you were coming down with a cold, you might have read somewhere that vitamin C may help your immune system or help you get over your cold faster. So when you walk over into the store and say, I think I need vitamin C for my cold, do they hand you a bottle of 500 milligram vitamin C? Or maybe a sachet packet that has a drink powder mix that's 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C?
Yeah.
Or do they tell you to go home and eat 17 oranges a couple of times this evening? So that's
Right.
sort of the same idea is when you're using something as a medicine, sometimes you can't eat enough
Sure.
of that parent compound to get medicinal amounts in your body. So the next generation of products after turmeric was curcumin. They took the curcumin out and concentrated it. That was better, but neither turmeric nor curcumin absorbs very well. So the early studies on curcumin used 20 to 24 capsules a day to get enough
Wow.
curcumin into the bloodstream to be measurable. Now, as I tell folks, unless it's dipped in Godiva dark chocolate, I am probably not going to take 24 capsules a day.
Right. There's no way.
That's just too hard to stick with.
Yeah.
So the third generation of products looked at how can we boost that absorption so people don't have to buy a 60 count and be done with it in 3 days, right? The very first way to boost absorption was using a compound found in black pepper called piperine, and it works. This was over 20 years ago. However, it has a huge downside. Number one, it interacts with about 80% of the prescription drugs that are on the market. So if you're on anti-seizure medicine or heart rhythm medication, certain kinds of blood pressure medicine, if you're HIV positive and you're taking triple cocktail, certain cancer treatments, you cannot also take piperine. The other issue that we have is that it affects liver metabolism of drugs and absorption of drugs. So sometimes we see that it speeds things through the body too quickly.
Uh-huh.
There's also some negative implications for leaky gut syndrome because in leaky gut, people have the doorways in their intestines are open a little too wide, so too much gets in. Some things get in that are not supposed to, and it irritates the immune system. Most people who struggle with autoimmune diseases are also struggling with leaky gut. One of the ways piperine works for absorption is to open those doorways wider, while at the same time, the doctor might be trying to get those doorways to shut tighter. So, those are some reasons that we decided that even though that was one way that boosted curcumin absorption, it was not the way that we wanted to use. So, we work with a company to come up with this great product, the Curamed 750 that you were talking about. This curcumin is called BCM 95 curcumin. And they use a patented process where every single flake of curcumin is embedded with a tiny little bit of turmeric essential oil.
Hmm.
So I tease our marketing department a little bit and say, you missed the boat on this. We don't sell curcumin. It's not a one for. This is a two for. You get two for the price of one.
Hmm.
This is two extractions. The first extraction is curcumin. Now, essential oils from turmeric contain zero curcumin,
Got it.
but they do contain other really beneficial compounds, including things called aromatic terpenes that are themselves anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-cancer. So when they do, then they do a steam distillation process of turmeric to get the essential oil. So now you've captured a much broader spectrum of all of the elements within the turmeric plant that are able to provide health benefits while concentrating them to levels that can be used medicinally. So the way they do it, that BCM 95 process that has over 50 patents worldwide, is they embed every flake of curcumin with a little bit of turmeric essential oil.
Hmm.
It boosts the absorption of curcumin about 700%. So very bodaciously, that's good. But it also provides independent health benefits because the essential oil contains those aromatic terpenes that no other curcumin product contains. And the combination keeps the curcumin in the active form longer. So when we look at a graph of human absorption, so we have our curcumin is the most clinically studied enhanced absorbability curcumin in the world. We're up to 90 studies now, 41 of them human clinical trials. So
Wow.
we do have some human data on absorption. And what we see is a nice curve, gets into the bloodstream in therapeutic levels in 15 to 30 minutes and stays there a minimum of 8 hours. So that's awesome. That's what we want to see. When you look at absorption data from products that are using piperine, black pepper extract, we see that it gets into the bloodstream quickly, but within 2.5 hours, it's not detectable because it causes a big spike and a big drop off. So not quite as good for keeping that consistent, steady state curcumin active in the bloodstream.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why it's so beneficial is because you're getting a wider breadth of coverage. Many practitioners are comfortable using Curamed 750 twice daily, once in the morning, once in the evening. Some, if they have concerns, if their patient has or if the consumer has a little bit more difficult needs, or maybe they have bigger health challenges, we'll increase that to 3 times a day.
Got it.
But you're really getting a good curcumin coverage. I encourage people to take it with food, not because it will upset your stomach, but because I think there's factors in food that help you absorb it even a little bit better. And I also think that people forget to take their vitamins and minerals and
Right.
nutrients and dietary supplements if you don't pair them with a meal. So that's generally how I recommend people use it.
That's a great initial breakdown. Phenomenal intro there. Curcumin is so powerful, folks. And just like Cheryl was saying, turmeric only contains 2 to 5% curcumin. So for medicinal effects, you need curcumin enhanced with turmeric essential oil, hence that BCM 95. I have a quote here from Dr. Ajay Goel, professor and chair, Department of Translational Genomics and Oncology at the Beckman Research Institute City of Hope Comprehensive Center, Cancer Center. Curcumin is not only a good preventative for various diseases, including a variety of human cancers. Of course, no medical advice here. We're just saying what the literature shows us. But a growing body of data indicates that it may be even more helpful in conjunction with conventional chemo for enhanced clinical outcomes. In addition to cancer, curcumin has been shown to be potentially effective in a wide variety of other diseases as well, like rheumatoid and osteoarthritis, Alzheimer's, dementia, inflammatory bowel diseases, and much more. So, why exactly, Cheryl, is curcumin good for so many different problems, from all the way to inhibiting 5-LOX, downregulating COX-2, suppressing NF-kappa beta? Tell us a little bit more about it. Why exactly is it so effective for a broad range of issues?
Well, we at our company, we have over 130 different products. And I'm always asked, if you could only take one for the rest of your life, what would it be? And it's really hard to answer because we have I take products. I'm probably one of our best customers. I take products every single day. But if you twisted my arm, I would have to say the Curamed 750. And I'll tell you why, is because it works at such a basic level in the body, and there is nothing else that's thus far been discovered that is as powerful. There are 3 things, and I'm generalizing a little bit, but there are 3 things that, number one, are part of the aging process, and number two, they are part of the development of virtually all chronic diseases. Number one is oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is not always some unnatural thing from outer space. Our body creates oxidative stress just by the process of being alive. Our body creates oxidative stress when we are very vigorous and athletic. We use up our antioxidant stores much faster. Oxidative stress damages DNA, and DNA is the blueprint for how to make the next cell. Your cells all turn over in your body at least every 7 years. Every single cell in your body has turned over at least once. So if you did something more than 7 years ago, it wasn't you. You
Hmm.
got to get out of jail free card. So you
Wow.
can let go of that one. But because of this, if there's damage to the DNA, which is what happens with oxidative stress, the cell's not quite perfect. So I tell patients that what if you are building a house and you've got the blueprints spread out on the coffee table and you spill your coffee on them? And then you mop it up and you damage the blueprint, and now you don't put a back door in. So you build the house, but there's no back door.
Hmm.
Well, is the house sturdy and strong? Yes. Will it last its regular lifetime? Yes. Is it as good as or efficient as the parent cell? No. You've lost a little bit of efficiency because now it doesn't have a back door.
Right.
In worst case scenario, that damage to the DNA turns the cell from a normal cell into a cancer cell. Oxidative stress is one of the biggest causes of damage to DNA. So when I say it's a super potent antioxidant, and that's one of the ways in which it works, it's a fat soluble antioxidant, so it can go places that water soluble may not go. It is a superb antioxidant with over a 1.1 million ORAC value per 100 grams, which is spectacular. So that's number one prong. Number two prong, chronic inflammation. At the root of virtually every development of every chronic disease, chronic inflammation also plays a role in the aging process. If you have a lot of chronic inflammation, you're going to see accelerated aging. It's not just about whether your joints hurt. It's not just about whether you have reddened skin. Chronic inflammation can be silent. It can be in your blood vessels. It can be in your kidneys. It can be in your liver. So
Right.
looking at pulling back on chronic inflammation is one of the best things that we can do for living a long, healthy life and preventing or dealing with chronic diseases. And that's the second place where curcumin is spectacular. It is the best all around natural anti-inflammatory compound out there. Our Curamed 750 has been compared to ibuprofen,
Hmm.
acetaminophen, brand name of which is Tylenol. People may know ibuprofen by brand names like Motrin and Advil.
Right.
It's been compared to diclofenac sodium, which is a prescription anti-inflammatory for rheumatoid arthritis, and in combination with our Boswellia, it's been compared to celecoxib. That's the generic of Celebrex, the number one best-selling prescription drug for arthritis in the knees. Every single time, our curcumin has worked as well as or better than these interventions, but without all of the problems and all of the adverse effects and all of the safety issues. So if I'm taking Curamed 750 because of fill in the blank, I mean, we could spend the next 3 hours talking
Right.
about the studies and the things for which it's been studied. I'm not going to have to worry about tearing up my stomach, having chronic gastrointestinal bleeds, slowing down my liver activity, damaging the liver's production of glutathione, reducing kidney function, raising blood pressure, and increasing risks of heart attack and stroke.
Yeah.
That's just top line adverse effects from using some of these prescription and over-the-counter non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So that's the second prong is it is super potent as an antioxidant. It is a super potent anti-inflammatory. The third prong of the aging process, the third prong of chronic disease development and progression
Hmm.
has to do with toxic exposure. And it could be toxic exposure from outside your body, like radon or BPA and plastics, or there's a lot of different toxins we come in contact with. But our own body makes toxic compounds as well.
Right.
Like when our body is getting rid of our hormones, like we've got our old used up hormones that need to be taken out of circulation, they become a little bit toxic. Same thing, it takes cholesterol out of circulation, other compounds out of circulation. The major organ of detoxification in our body is the liver.
Yeah.
And the liver grabs those toxins and puts them in the toxin taxi cab. And the toxin taxi cab is a liquid called bile. So the liver puts the toxins in the bile, and then the bile is drip, drip, dripped into the intestines when the food train comes along, and the food train carries the toxins out of our body. That's the way it's supposed to work. As we age and in the presence of certain problems that may impact liver function, we just don't make as much bile. One of the best things two best things that curcumin does is number one, it stimulates the self-repair process in the liver to help the liver repair itself with healthier cells. But number
Hmm.
two, it stimulates bile production. So more toxin taxicabs means less toxic exposure in your body. So
Yeah.
I am not aware of any other product that as powerfully addresses all three of these areas, oxidative stress, chronic inflammation, chronic exposure to toxins. And curcumin does all of that. And Curamed, in my opinion, is the best form of curcumin because the clinical studies have been done on a variety of dosages, but the most common dosage is 2 per day. Don't you hate it when you read some awesome study? Let's say you read some study that turns white hair black,
Yeah.
and you use product XYZ, and you're all excited because you have white hair and you want to turn your white hair black. And you go to the store to buy it, and you buy it because it's quoting the study on the label. And
Uh-huh.
then when you compare it, you see that the study used 500 milligrams 3 times a day, and the dosage in the product is 10 milligrams.
Yeah.
I hate when that happens
Mm.
because people get disappointed. Then they walk away from our world of natural health, whereas if they had been connected to a product that was effective
Yeah.
and was supplied in the dose that was actually used in the clinical study, they would have gotten far superior results. So
Hmm.
the most common dosage of our product is 2 per day of the 750. That's the one that was used in the published human trials, one twice daily. There are a couple studies using 3 per day. There is also a study that was done on men that were getting radiation therapy for prostate cancer, trying to prevent damage to the urinary tract by using our product. Those researchers chose to use 2 capsules 3 times a day, so
Okay.
6 capsules a day. So the dosage is kind of in a lot of different directions. And by the way, all these studies turned out quite positively. But for most individuals, 2 per day is all you need.
Amazing. And it looks like each soft gel is giving you guaranteed the 500 milligrams of pure curcuminoids in a
Yes.
750 milligram complex versus something like you said, instead of getting 10 milligrams when you're getting 500 total serving size. So it's much more potent. And I'm glad you highlighted acetaminophen
Mhm.
because according to drugwatch.com, it's the leading cause of acute liver failure in the U.S. More than 100,000 calls to poison centers every year just from acetaminophen overdose. But when you compare that with something like curcumin or this Curamed, we're actually potentially going to help the liver, right? Can you talk about that a little bit? How not only are we reducing the pain, but we're also going to be taking care of the liver and the emotional aspects that come with pain and when someone's dealing with an injury or things of that nature. So hit on that a little bit, how this can actually potentially help the liver.
Absolutely. So our curcumin, our BCM 95 curcumin, is used in a couple of different product SKUs. So you've got Curamin and Curamin Extra Strength, which are targeting pain that contain this curcumin, and then you have the Curamed 750, which is the highest dose all curcumin product. Curcumin can be used for pain, absolutely, and I've highlighted a few of the studies. It can also be used for things that aren't necessarily painful.
Yeah.
So when we look at the clinical studies, and by the way, one of the criticisms of our world is people like to say, well, it's not like this stuff has been clinically studied. Well, that nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah.
If you go on to the National Institutes of Health, NIH, their electronic database, it's called PubMed, like public medicine. And if you want to go look for yourself, it's a free searchable database. It's PUB like public, MED like medicine, pubmed.gov, G-O-V. Make sure you put in the G-O-V or you'll end up someplace else. Put in curcumin. You're going to get over 20,000 studies that pop up. If you're interested in curcumin and breast cancer, put in curcumin, breast cancer. You're going to get probably about 2,000 studies that pop up.
Wow.
If you put in curcumin and Alzheimer's, curcumin dementia, curcumin brain, curcumin kidneys, curcumin liver, you're going to see study after study after study. So absolutely, Curamed can be used for a lot of different physiological issues. Ours in particular has been studied on things like fatty liver disease. We are in an epidemic of fatty liver. Fatty liver is exactly what it sounds like. It's fat deposits in the liver that interfere with proper liver functioning that in a worst case scenario can lead to scarring of the liver, which is called cirrhosis. And when you start to have fibrosis and cirrhosis, then your goal is to keep it from getting worse. But while it's still only, I shouldn't say only, but while it's still at the just fatty liver stage, that is reversible. And it's estimated that 2 out of 3 people over the age of 65 have some level of fatty liver
Mhm.
because it's closely correlated to type 2 diabetes. Now, you
Yeah.
don't have to have type 2 diabetes to have fatty liver disease,
Right.
but it's very closely correlated because in diabetes, we see that the sugar can't get into the cell because of insulin resistance to be burned. And so more and more of those sugars are put into fat. Well, that fat just doesn't go to our rear end. That fat doesn't just go to
Right.
our arms or our belly. That fat goes into our liver as
Yeah.
well. So, there's a lot of different steps to dealing with this epidemic of fatty liver that slows down liver function, slows down detoxification, and can accelerate the aging process. And part of that answer is absolutely the Curamed 750, getting it on board to help support the healthy liver activity. Another issue for which curcumin's been studied that might surprise people, major depressive disorder.
Right.
There are 4 studies specifically on our Curamed 750 and major depressive disorder, one of which was in comparison to fluoxetine, which is the generic of Prozac, where it worked as well as Prozac
Wow.
without the adverse effects. And so people say, well, does this do something to serotonin? Because the prescription drugs are called SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. If serotonin were the only reason people became depressed, we would have cured this terrible brain disease by now. That's just not the only part of it, not the only moving part. They have found that people who struggle with depression have higher levels of chronic inflammation in the brain than people who do not.
Interesting.
The people who struggle, and when you have higher levels of inflammation, your neurotransmitter production and activity is just not the same. Just like if you have inflammation in your knee
Right.
activity is not going to be the same.
Yep.
Another thing is people who have major depression have much higher levels of oxidative stress in the brain. So that's another thing that I have to deal with. And the third thing that they found is that people who are profoundly depressed are reduced in their ability to create new brain cells. So every one of us makes new brain cells every day. We used to be taught that you don't make new brain cells. I
Yeah.
can remember when I was a kid, wear your bicycle helmet, don't go to too many bachelorette parties. You need to take care of your brain cells because that's all you got. That's
Yeah.
not true. The brain does make new brain cells. One of the things that stimulates brain cell production is called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Don't have to remember that, but just know that the most powerful natural compound ever found to boost BDNF levels is curcumin. And so what we see in individuals who have profound depression is some of them are not even making any new brain cells. That's how low their BDNF activity is, and curcumin can boost that up. So there's a lot of different factors that come into play when you are using curcumin to make the brain healthier and to help with dealing with issues with depression. And I'll reiterate what you said earlier. We are not trying to diagnose your disease. Please don't
Right.
throw all your medicine out the window and tell your doctor, Cheryl on the radio and Cheryl on the podcast told me to do that. No, you need to work in conjunction with your healthcare practitioner. I think that the best efforts occur and the best outcomes occur when everybody on the team is pulling in the same direction.
Yeah.
But there is some fantastic research that you can do enormous things with your health and have great benefits by using clinically studied, scientifically proven dietary supplements that can make a real difference. In this case, in how your brain works and how your liver works and how your joints work. Even with cardiovascular disease, people don't think about the fact that cardiovascular disease, heart disease, is a process of chronic inflammation.
Yeah.
The inside of the blood vessels get inflamed. There's inflammation all throughout the system. Inflamed tissue damages and cracks and scrapes more easily. And when you get an abrasion on the inside of one of your blood vessels, guess what the body does? The body is like a good mama and it wants to put a Band-Aid on it.
Mm.
Well, the body makes Band-Aids out of calcium and cholesterol. So you start to see, because there's so many places where you've got little areas of damage, more and more Band-Aids build up, more and more oxidized cholesterol, more and more calcium. And then the Band-Aids themselves become a problem
Yeah.
because now you have an uneven surface on the blood vessel, easier to catch a blood clot that comes by, and you're narrowing the opening so
Right.
the heart has to work harder to push the blood through. So if you're trying to deal with any level of cardiovascular issues, one of the most important first steps is get that chronic inflammation down.
Yeah.
That's one of the most basic things you need to do.
Incredible, Cheryl. Thank you. And just like that, we come to the end of episode 194. Like you said, we need several hours just to discuss this, but this was our first time in 2025 here highlighting the Curamed 750. Maybe next time we have you on, we'll even dive deeper, let's say, into the Curamed plus the clinical OPC option that's available. Then we have the Curamin, MIN, extra strength pain relief, and then even just the acute pain relief Curamed, which there's that
Absolutely.
whole family of the curcumin products here through Terry Naturally. And in the meantime, where's a good place people can learn more or stay in the loop with what's going on at EuroPharma, Terry Naturally? And then we'll end it there.
To learn more about our company, our website is EuroPharma USA. Euro like Europe, pharma like pharmaceutical, USA. If you don't put in the USA, you will end up in Europe somewhere. EuroPharmaUSA.com. We also have a third-party educational site, which has some fantastic articles, references, research called TerryTalksNutrition.com.
Perfect. We'll be directing our listeners there. Always appreciate your dedication and time, our dear Cheryl. Thank you, and I look forward to our next one.
I do too. Bye-bye.